My name's Toby. I'm one of the founders of AnsibleDB, and I'd like to just take some time really just to talk a little bit about the product. We're going to be doing a live demo and kind of talk around the problems that we faced and how this product was born. So the big secret that I'd love to know from other people, actually, and maybe you can put some comments in the chat, is around Cmdb Systems. So Cmdb Systems, from certainly my experience and talking to people in the field, is usually the data's incomplete, it's not accurate, certainly not up to date. And if you want to add any custom information to a Cmdb, there's quite a bit of work involved to get all that in there. So AnsibleDB was born from a problem that Dennis and I were facing at a previous company that we worked at. And that problem is getting accurate data, getting it quickly, and getting the information that I need, not just, what host name have I got, what IP address, some custom information that I want to find out about. So I found myself in my previous role asking Dennis, I said, Dennis, can you go and get me, at the time we were facing an end of life on Red Hat 5. Can you go and tell me how many Red Hat 5 servers we have in the London data center? Back then we were using Puppet. Puppet's got a database. It was easy. You just curl the Puppet database, grab the information out, and you were on your way. We then did a massive migration to Ansible. Similar question I was asking, how many Red Hat 5 servers have we got? Are we meeting this CIS compliance check, et cetera, et cetera. And Dennis and the team kind of all looked at me a bit like, well, no, we had that when we had Puppet, but we've moved to Ansible now and there's no database we can go and collect that information. And then you can tell by that, there's no database back then. So, we started looking at, how to get Ansible to hold a database. So that's where we got to, and that is where we are today, right? So we have built this. It's two components. There's a plugin to Ansible. So whenever you do an Ansible run, you can collect all the information and then you essentially put it into a database. So we've built a very simple database, and then you can curl all the information out of that database. And Dennis will be showing you in the demonstration after my demo of setting up the database, how quick and easy it really is to get that. And then on top of that, the last thing that we have added is what you want to and what you don't want to store, right? So you might be in a sensitive environment that you don't want to store IP addresses, or you don't want to store, certain parts that are in, the facts that Ansible collects. We've got some functionality to be able to hide that and not store that information. So moving on, I think we're good. Right, so there are several ways to actually stand up the database. And all the documentation which will be sent out is in our GitHub page. So in here, we talk about whether you want to install it just straight on a virtual machine. There's a one-liner, or you can go manually and go through it. More recently, we've built it into a container. And we've done that for a couple of reasons. One, obviously, it's portable. A lot of people using containers, and you don't have to mess around with your local system to get this working. But equally, we've incorporated HTTPS into the Docker container. So only within the Docker container currently, you will get full secure with it. Now, what is good to know is that you can build your own Docker container from here. Now, we have a certificate and key that we've kind of built just to get this working. But obviously, you can rebuild the Docker image and change that around and have your own certification around there if you're in an environment that needs that. So there's some examples in GitHub, but it really is as simple as a compose file that looks like this. So we're putting all of our data at the moment into Mongo. I would hope that you wouldn't use a password like this. I've seen worse. So you put what root password you want. You may have a Mongo database somewhere else, so you wouldn't need this. You would just change this to point to your Mongo database. But obviously, for the purpose of this demo, I've just got two containers, one running the database and one running the API server. So this is all you need. It's up in Docker Hub, so you can quite easily just download it like this, and you only need port 443 open. It then is as simple as doing a Docker compose up, and it will go ahead, pull Mongo, and then pull when that completes. I could have saved time by downloading these quicker, but I mean, it doesn't take long. There, we're done. So we now have those two services running, and Dennis will now talk you through the Ansible side of that. Obviously, we've got the custom plugin in there that will start sending data across to this service. So over to you, Dennis.
So now Toby set up the Docker container and the database and the API. Let me show you what sort of data we're actually going to collect and put inside. So Ansible comes with a setup module that goes and collects some base information about all of our servers. So if we just scroll to the top, it's quite a big document. It's got IP addresses, domains, environment variables, interface information, tells you about memory, mount information, and lots of OS stuff. So it'd be great if we could collect this from every server and actually store it somewhere, so that we don't have to keep going to the server every time we want to find out. We can put it somewhere and then just check it. And this stuff, it includes Windows, network devices, the cloud or on-prem. If you could store that somewhere and query it, it would be quite powerful. Hundreds or thousands of servers with the data available in literally seconds. So the source for this is on Ansible Galaxy, and I'm not going to go through the setup now, but the setup's here, taking you through how to do it for Yum and also for Debian variations. If I have a look at the deployment file, so this deployment is exactly the same one that you can see on here. The deployment file just runs the roles, it collects the data, and then posts it to the API. In group vars, we have the endpoint, so that will be your database that you've just set up. I have Ansible configuration file with my key in it and a few other things I want for my particular environment. And I've got an inventory file that stores all the servers and the Ubuntu CentOS servers, some Azure, there's some Windows stuff in there as well, just to prove it works on Windows. And straight out the bat, we just run the deploy. So this takes about 1 minute 13 seconds from earlier, and it's just going to go off to every server, run that setup command, and then pull that data back into a little YAML file, and then ship that off to the database. And in about 40 seconds, we'll be able to run a couple of easy queries where we can pull out some relevant information, and you can see as a first pass the sort of information that we can collect. So I'm just going to let that run for a few seconds. There is a slightly longer query later, which takes 2 minutes, but hopefully I can talk through that while it runs. So this is a collection of Ubuntu and CentOS servers spread across EU West 2 and a Mumbai data center, just to show that it works in different locations. Just let that finish. So all of this is in the code. You may have to make a few updates for your environment, but it pretty much will work out of the box. Okay. Here we go. Let's just do the Windows stuff. Okay, so there it goes. It's sent all the data off. So now, if we just run the first query, so we're using JQ. So what we're doing is we're curling the database endpoint, and then we're just literally running a JQ command, and we're parsing that data. So that gives us the first shot. So far, straight away, we can see all of the server names, the OS, and the version. We can then move on. I've got a couple of queries here. So this one's going to show us like the mapping of the operating system and how many we have for each one. So you can see we've got 7 Ubuntu's, we've got a couple of Windows boxes, we've got we've got 4 rel 8 boxes. And this is all information that you can't get that quickly to visualize it like this. So this one just gives you a breakdown of the OS family. You can see here that we're using the Ansible OS family, nice and easy, quick breakdown. So that's about as far as you can go with the stats you get. There is memory stuff, but it's not that unique, and it's pretty much kind of not data that we need. So the next part to this is, helps if I'm on the right screen. The next part to this is to actually use a custom extensions that I've built. So if we just clone this into, so again, it's more Ansible. It fits straight into this collection. If it's there, the collection uses it. If it isn't there, the collection ignores it. If we go into the custom extension in the main file, you can see I've got all these extra scripts that's hashed out. So just unhash sample facts and CIS and Windows, because we've got some Windows servers, and I'll leave the rest hashed out because I'll just add time. And then I'm going to kick off another deploy and let that run, and then talk through what that's doing. So that's going to go and run again, and this time, so we don't have to do anything else. We'll just rerun the Ansible code. The Ansible run takes a little longer because now we're collecting specific information from the remote servers. It's actually going to run a few commands, and the local facts, that shell script is just going to go and collect AWS information or Azure information from the metadata URL. It's going to collect like the region, the availability zone, the instance type. It's going to assign a team owner, just because I thought that might be interesting. Like a call out plan if it's 24/7, if it's production or dev, and also the cloud provider. And all that's going to get put into one file that when we run this setup module and run at the Ansible script, it adds it to the output of the setup module, and it pulls that data back in, and we just ship it straight out to AnsibleDB. So this one takes about 2.5 minutes. Yeah. So this is kind of where the magic happens, really. Just using the setup file is okay, but if you want to know something specific, and we'll move into that after this, into a specific sort of issue as well, and then you can use those dynamic inventories in your Ansible run to target any servers based on a specific fact or a specific set of facts. So it's quite it can get quite powerful depending on the data that you collect. So let's leave that to run mode. It's always the worst bit where we're collecting real data in real time, but unfortunately just have to give it another 30 seconds. So I'll just get my next command ready. So the first thing, once it finishes, the first thing we're going to do is just have a look at the local facts that I've created from my sample script. And there'll be one for every server, and it will be outputted into a nice easy to read format. And then we can actually pull data out from that, and I'll show you some other example jQueries as well. So jQuery really is your friend. If you don't know much about it, or you think you're good with awk, you'll be much better with JQ. It's worth spending that hour or two just playing around with some sample jQuery stuff, and just get a base knowledge, because it will save you so much time and effort. JSON is everywhere at the moment, not just for these sort of files, but it's sort of everywhere. I think AWS have a lot of output in JSON files as well, so it's really worth learning. Okay, so that's done. Didn't take too long. We've got about 40 servers there. So the next step is to just look at the local facts. So we've got one of these files now on every server, and you can populate them before you start. You could add them in later. So we can see here that this is managed by the Windows team. There's the AMI. That's the region it lives in. It's in the AWS. If we scroll up, we've got some in Azure here, so we can see the region in Azure it's in. We can see the instance type. It looks like a test server run by the operations team. Just useful information that you can pull out straight away on a particular server, and get to the team that are responsible. So if we move on, so this one we're going to break down how many servers are in each availability zone. So we can see that we've got 30 in AP South. We've got 4 in UK South. So if someone was to ask you these sort of questions, they're not easy to get the answer to without having something like this that you can pull out. And that's the spread of servers across the clouds, various clouds you're using. And this is all just using the local metadata, the 169 address, whatever it is. And there's no root access required. So this one here gives a list, a region breakdown of different instance types. So you can see that you've got 10 T2 mediums in the USC, so that's going to cost a couple of quid. And in the UK South region, we've got 1 of those and 3 of those. So, so that's the sort of thing you can pull out. So it's quite interesting. So now let's look at the CIS data. And it only runs on RHEL 7. So we're going to get some nulls where servers aren't actually running this. So you can see here, there's quite a few bits of output. And so we can also create dynamic inventories, and we're going to do one now just to sort of demonstrate how you can incorporate a shell script that produces an inventory into an Ansible playbook, running an Ansible playbook. So, for example, if you've got a vulnerability in CIS and you need to fix it, it turns out you don't have something called AIDE installed, which is this one here. So we're failing a CIS check because we don't have that installed. You've got to remediate it because otherwise the hackers are going to exploit your system and take all your money and all your data. So AIDE is an advanced intrusion detection environment, and once the database is initialized, it can be used to verify the integrity of files. So the first step is to install it. So if we check in our environment using the CIS facts, what we can do is we can run another jQuery, and this time we're going to search on this contains string here. So if it has failed package aid, it will give us a list of all the servers that have failed. And we know it's failed because we can see them. So we've got about 10 servers here, all RHEL 7, that are failing this test. So the boss has said, right, you've got to fix this before you can leave tonight. He's off down the pub. Right, okay. If you didn't have AnsibleDB or some way of getting this information really quickly, you'd be logging into servers or running remote commands, or maybe using Ansible CLI to try and get this information, but it's going to take quite a bit of time. Now, for us, luckily, we have this. And because we've got the list, we can just run the dynamic inventory. So I've created this here with the same string in. You can see that this is the output for our dynamic inventory. So it's done. And that's the script. You know, you can do it in Python. I've just done it in Bash because it was just relatively simple. So now we can incorporate this script into our run. So here, your inventory becomes the script. It's not a flat file anymore. And you just press enter on that. This will take a couple of seconds to run. The output isn't that great. We'll let it run, and that will just work on those 10 RHEL 7 servers. So we've targeted the servers that we want to run on. If you run it again, because it's idempotent, it won't do it twice. It will tell you that it's already there. But we want to get this information back into the database. So we can see it's all green, so that's all good. Now we want to get it back into the database. We have to run it. We have to run the check again. So to speed things up, I'm just going to go into deploy and just change it to CentOS, which is a subset of the servers in the inventory. So we'll run against everything, since it's say RHEL servers that we care about. And then we're going to rerun the playbook. So again, we don't have to change anything. We just rerun it from the right directory. If I give it the right name. Okay, so that's going to run. It'll be slightly quicker than last time. And then when it finishes, we're just going to do a quick check to see if there's anything still failing that particular test. And then we'll double check the list. We'll output the CIS facts, and we'll actually have a look and see if it's passing now. And then we know that we fixed the problem. And it doesn't have to be a CIS fact. That's just what I've used for this example. It could be any fact. It could be all production servers or all dev servers. It could be a particular package version that needs to be updated, because you found the vulnerability. You could target the owners of servers. If you have that information, you get a list of every server that is managed by the Windows team or the Hadoop team, and you can pull that information out as long as you've collected it first. So having this information at your fingertips it's never been possible with Ansible before. It still isn't possible now. But if you use this product, AnsibleDB, it's open source. You can just get a copy, set it up. Yeah, and this is a bit of a quick demo. If you want a bit more detail, then feel free to get in touch. You have my LinkedIn. There'll be some links for you to follow to try it for yourself afterwards. So yeah, just get in touch and we can go into a bit more detail. It's almost there. And like I say, once it finishes, we'll do another check and then confirm that it's actually been updated. And then that'll be back to Toby. So it's almost there. It's just posting now. Okay, so let's check we'll run that same command where we're checking for that string, and we got nothing back, which is expected. And now if we actually check CIS output, we can see we're passing. So it's actually fixed it. It's been picked up as passing. Right. 4 minutes later, you can join your boss down the pub or whatever. It's done. So again, if you want to see it, give us a shout. I hope that you can kind of see the value in having this information at hand and how you can target machines for a specific purpose with Ansible to fix something or to find out information. Yeah, it's going to save you a lot of time and a lot of effort. So, thanks for watching this demo of me, but I'm just going to quickly pass back to Toby just for the last word.
So this is essentially a UI looking at the data that you've pulled in. It's still got the same, curl attributes. You can still, if you prefer the command line and you want to get things out, do that. If you prefer a nice UI to be able to see things, this is probably where you want to be. We can pull out. This isn't looking at the code that Dennis just sent up, just so that people don't think it's the data's out. This is some other test data we've got. But I'm splitting out different distribution versions, kernels, and you can go one further. So if I wanted to look at all of the T2 smalls in an environment, I could click on that. Here's all my T2 smalls. If I wanted to go and find out some information about the T2 small, here it is. There's some local facts here. You can get some CIS information here about the things that have failed CIS, the things that have passed CIS. We've incorporated some Kubernetes pods and we can actually pull all the data. I don't know if this is actually in. Yes, it is. So we can have a look at different namespaces, how many pods you've got in that namespace, etc., etc. You can export CSV reports, and you can move the dashboard about, which out of everything probably took me the longest time to develop. So you can move things around and they stick. You can resize them. So the commercial product is something quite new to us. But it's kind of built, obviously, a step up from the open source version. And then lastly, we're looking to, we feel this is a good CMDB, but equally, there's a lot of people out there that use different CMDBs and they don't want to. So we're looking at incorporating feeding different CMDBs. We've done some preliminary pilots with ServiceNow, so we can actually update, ServiceNow CIs and either populate what's already there or populate new. And we're looking at other ServiceNow being the biggest out there, I think, in the corporate space that we've worked in. But again, if someone comes along to me and says, well, what about this? What about that? We're happy to see, make this product better. So that's it from me. Thank you very much. And I will pass back now. Anyone got any questions? Just feel free to ask.